how you're going to do that.
I'm going to try to do it without holding. I'm going to try to project, so let me know if you can't hear me. But thank you, Jeff, for that introduction, and thank you all for indulging me in this subject today on Valentine's Day when we celebrate love, specifically eros, the Greek word for romantic love. But today we're going to talk about life and love in a broader sense. The Greeks had at least 8 names for the different forms of love, but agape love or unconditional love will be the main subject there. But we're going to focus on what the near-death experiencers, what their experiences have been, what they suggest about life and love, and what a lot of their takeaways are that I'm going to share at the end of this. What is life? Let me start there. Suppose your grandchild or son or daughter asked you, what is life? How would you respond? Would you say, well, it's the time from when you're born to when you die and everything you do in between? And what if they asked you, is there any purpose to life? Or does it just happen? What would you say? You might safely say, I don't know. I don't know that anybody knows. Now go see your grandmother. But what happens when you ask yourself that question? I suspect most of us would say, I don't know that anybody knows. I've got my hands too full just living life to think about that question. It is what it is. And what about love? What would you say to your grandchild or son or daughter if they asked, what is love? That one may be easier. You could say, it's a feeling you'll have when you really like someone, like your mom or dad or a best friend, or how you feel when somebody really likes you. You feel loved. At some point in your life, you'll probably really like somebody to the extent of being crazy about them and want to spend your life with them or a lot of time with them, and that's true love. And then they'll ask, well, what's a feeling? It's an emotion. Well, what's an emotion? You'll know it when you feel it. Now go see your grandmother. So at weddings, we often hear a description of love when they read 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. And other descriptions of what love is not. So life and love, what are they and what does one have to do with the other? What's love got to do with it? What's love but a secondhand emotion, as Tina Turner tells us? Well, people who have had near-death experiences might have some light to shed on this. Individually, these near-death experiences may seem fringe, accounts that defy traditional science, odd anomalies described by individuals and thus subjective in nature, but collectively, they paint an interesting picture that is getting more and more attention. Over the past 50 years, with improved resuscitation techniques, information sharing via the internet, a lessened stigma over sharing these experiences, and serious research into trying to understand these experiences that defy a solely material or brain-based explanation. Thousands of similar cases have come forward, and a picture is forming that is less easy to ignore, due to the remarkable consistency in what these people are saying and how they're dramatically changed as individuals. So today, I want to share what these NDE patterns are, how these people are changed, and what they're saying about life and love. And then we're going to watch a 15-minute video of a man describe his NDE. I think it's one of the best, concise, classic ones. A lot of you have been in the class have seen this before. I never tire of this one. And then afterwards, I'll put on my flak jacket and field some questions. We're allowing 30 seconds for questions at the end of this talk. Though every near-death experience is very unique, no two are the same, they do contain many overlapping similarities, often depending upon how long or deep the experience is. For example, some report feeling themselves leave their bodies and witness many activities, even people's thoughts in the hospital room or at the scene of an accident, before transitioning into an unearthly environment. While others have no earthly out-of-body experience, but rather just immediately find themselves in a black velvety void or in a tunnel or in the light. Orthopedic surgeon Dr. Tony Sikoria was struck by lightning and had absolutely no interruption in consciousness. Hearing a loud crack, then watching people running toward him, but going past him to where he sees his body on the ground. Feeling wonderful, feeling no pain, seeing he can't get anyone's attention, and noticing his thoughts are continuing as before. Still himself, though sharper, he thinks of his wife and children who were there at the picnic. Upstairs in a pavilion where his thoughts carry him up the stairs and through the wall into that room, where he watches his wife doing face painting and his kids playing. From there, he feels drawn into what he describes as a river of energy that feels like pure love, where he travels for a bit and then suddenly finds himself back in pain looking up at a nurse who had fortunately been standing behind him in line for the phone and is now resuscitating him. There you heard an example of a veridical or verifiable out-of-body experience, wherein Dr. Cicoria initially stayed in the environment where he died and was resuscitated and witnessed many things that he accurately described later. These veridical out-of-body experiences are perhaps the strongest cases for understanding that consciousness is non-local. It's not isolated to the body, not generated by the brain, but rather filtered by the brain, and yet virtually always anchored to our physical bodies while we're alive. Another simple OBE example, an example of consciousness leaving the body, but while very much alive, is an experience by someone right here in this room, right here in River City, someone I worked with for years who, when driving to work one cold morning, hit ice. Went into a slide, and at that moment her car began to flip. Her consciousness was 50 feet above the car. As time slowed down dramatically, she watched as her car roll and flip, and watched someone's seatbelted and in her white coat, winter coat, being tossed around inside the vehicle, when her windshield and the driver's window would go by from where she was watching. And at the same time, she watched a pickup truck coming down Broadneck Road towards her. And then the next thing she remembers is waking up to a man from the pickup truck knocking on her window with her car on its side, yelling, "Are you okay, lady?" That could be described as a near-death experience. Most NDEs are reported following a death experience, when the heart, breathing, brain activity have stopped and the person recovers, or when there's a life-threatening event, like the one friend here experienced on that icy morning. But some have even occurred during meditation or after taking psychedelics without dying or facing a life-threatening event. René Jorgensen from Amsterdam, who I invited here years ago and shared his story at Heron Point, had an NDE while sitting on a beach in India with his girlfriend at that time, having taken some LSD. He was at that time a non-believer in reincarnation in God, but when she turned to him and said, "I think we were together in a prior life," it literally blew his mind. His consciousness exploded out of his body and moved to a location he describes as roughly 30 to 50 feet above them, where he watched the two of them facing each other and having a conversation. And then he felt completely absorbed into a light that he said was pure love, 1,000 times stronger than any love he had experienced before. He went on to have an in-depth core near-death experience with a movie-style-like review, where he watched and experienced from others' perspectives the pain he had caused people like his mother and a girlfriend he had betrayed. My favorite example of this is his story, wherein he said, "I'd completely forgotten this event. I'm at school with another buddy, and we're teasing, tormenting a girl out at recess. She's standing up against the wall, and I'm watching this again while I'm teasing and tormenting her, and then I'm all of a sudden in her, and I'm experiencing all from her experience. I'm experiencing every word that I was saying to her, and how devastated. She was such an easy target. She was devastated by this. And then not only that, I then experienced her going home and sharing it with her parents, and I experienced it from her parents' perspective, how they felt, how concerned they were for her child who didn't want to go back to school. And then I saw how introverted she got. I saw her struggles in her teen years and later. The ripple effect was phenomenal. It just went out, and I witnessed all of that. So, common elements. Let me run you through the common elements. Dr. Kenneth Ring, Dr. Raymond Moody, Dr. Bruce Grayson at UVA, who I consider the foremost researcher in the field, have all categorized these descriptions. They have scales that measure how deep they are. But to run through them, I've condensed them, so we're not going to go through too many, but they all start with the ineffability of trying to describe it. They're frustrated with the inability to describe what they experienced. They said it's not like a dream. It's more real than conscious life. The nonlinear time is very difficult. They said, I'll tell you in sequence, but it didn't happen that way. It all happened at once. They see colors and hear musical notes not familiar with here. Hard to relay how intense the feeling of love is and the unearthly environment and the unfamiliar scenery. Secondly, there's no pain, no physical pain, and a feeling of peace, though some have disconcerting. They're confused and have frightening experiences. Out-of-body experiences in earthly surroundings that I just described. They recognize their own body. They're often up near the ceiling. They describe 360-degree sight, often understand thoughts of those around them. Others can't hear or feel them, which I've mentioned can be frustrating for them when they're trying to tell them, I'm fine. They notice that they can penetrate solid items. They drift up through the ceiling or move through walls, and they can travel to other rooms or other places. I thought about my children who were home with my babysitter, and instantly I was there watching the babysitter with the children. Next, there's usually an initial unearthly environment, or that can happen immediately. Either complete blackness, a black velvety void can feel comfortable or disconcerting, or a tunnel, or being in darkness and moving toward a light, or they simply are immediately in light. It varies all over the place. Later, number 5 on my list is the unearthly environment. Once in the light, they feel absorbed by the light. The light permeates them with an indescribable feeling of unconditional love. Usually gorgeous landscapes, dazzling colors, everything seems alive and radiating love. They meet deceased loved ones or beings of light, or even once absorbed by the light, they insist they were with God or in the mind of the Creator. They always feel welcomed with enthusiasm and gain an overwhelming sense of being home. They constantly say, I was home. Often experience downloads of incredible knowledge, with all questions instantly answered telepathically by these beings of light or the light itself. Next, the guided life review. This is the element of most interest to researchers and the one that offers suggestions regarding the purpose of life. Guided by a light being, every moment, every thought, word, and action is available to observe, relive, and experience from the perspective of anyone present or impacting, with those people then impacting other people, hours, days, even years later. It's a true ripple effect. Not only that, but the person is able to understand the backstory of all participants, why they said what they said, why they acted the way they did. The person never feels judged, but rather doing the judging themselves, now approaching the moment from a new perspective of unconditional love and perfect understanding. Karen Thomas said, the word sin is the farthest thing from what I experienced during my life review. I felt nothing but unconditional love and understanding from those helping me review my life. It was no feeling of judgment, just an internal feeling of, I know I can do better than that. Some even describe being shown how events may have played out, how the individual made different choices. Let's see. Universally understood, they generally all say this, it's the ultimate empathetic teaching tool, usually experienced as pretty painful, but seen as invaluable. Now, before I go further, I'm going to share a couple of stories, because my favorite come from old Tom Sawyer, who claims he was the most studied near-death experiencer. He was a heavy equipment driver at a landfill. His love was his pickup truck. Got 2 stories for him. Operation Chop Chop, he relived an experience he'd forgotten where he mowed the backyard. His father said, go mow the backyard. Prior to this, his aunt, who lived next door, had told him that she was excited about the wildflowers in a part of this backyard, that she was going to make flower wreaths for the girls in the neighborhood. But he said, I relived it, watching myself mow the backyard and all the wildflowers, feeling I've been given permission to do this sense of I'm justified in doing this. And then he relived it from his aunt's perspective, how everything going through her mind. Why did Tommy do that? He's such a good boy. He would never intentionally do this. I don't understand. And he said she kept revisiting this for several days after the event. But one of the things he describes that's really stuck with me is he said, it is so vivid. The details in these life reviews are so vivid that I could have told you how many mosquitoes were in the backyard that day, which is an indication of how, while we were here in these bodies with all the perceptions that we process through our brains, we're very limited by what is out there. The next one is an interesting one where he punched out a guy. So he's in his pickup truck that he cherishes. He stopped in a town. A man walks out from between cars in front of his truck, running his finger along his hood, which he was not going to stand for. His truck was everything. So he yells something out the window. The man just casually walks around, puts his hand in the window, and just slaps him. That didn't go over well with Tom. So Tom relives him getting out of the car. He remembers how angry he was, and then it flips. He's now the man. And he sees what an angry Tom Sawyer looks like, and he said, it is terrifying. He said, as the other man, I couldn't get my hands up to protect me when the first punch knocked me, and I could feel my teeth going through my lip. I felt my nose get broken. I felt my head pop on the asphalt as I went back. I felt the humiliation this man had. I felt every one of the 32 punches this man gave me. And Tom said, I almost killed this guy, and I relived it. But what really gets interesting is he said, I then saw this man in a bar right before this, and I understood that he had recently lost his wife, and he had turned to drinking to try to deal with it. And he said, I saw the man walk out of the bar, down an alley, across the street, and over to the street I was on when he walked across in front of me. And I not only understood that, I understood everything about his background. He said, you can't imagine what I knew about his life. So anyway, that's a pretty dramatic life review where we understand the backstory and we experience from the people involved. Another one, Marion Rome witnessed a time in her life when she was extremely upset with a grocery store cashier over a minor issue and angrily notified the store manager about it. Her life review revealed the cashier's difficult backstory, and Marion felt the woman's pain and realized she almost cost the cashier her job over a trivial matter. Here's what she said. What I knew now in the amazingly loving light was that woman nearly lost her job because of me that day. During my NDE, I learned that woman, on the other hand, was caring for a very, very sick and mentally disabled child. I was seeing her looking after her kid, and I could feel all of her emotional pain and fear as she thought she really couldn't afford to lose one of her 2 jobs. I know absolutely all the thoughts that had passed through her mind when this incident happened. I felt the tears and the sadness my own words had caused her. I felt her distress in such an intense way. I have never, ever felt so much pain in my entire life. I knew everything about her. Very tough earthly life, how she died from cancer, leaving her son an orphan, and how my reaction to a non-problem that day affected her in a very big way. And finally, one more, Christopher Sassano. I could see my whole life as if I watched it in a movie theater. I just slid into the experience. I began to feel everything I had caused others to feel. I did experience being nice to an elderly woman and helping her cross the street. I could feel how this event rippled through her life. She was so grateful for this kindness and passed it on to others. I got to feel the repercussions of the time I went into a bank and was rude to a female bank teller. I experienced how she went home and was mean to her kids. She kicked the dog in anger and slammed the door. I realized my action had triggered this. Life is a series of endless choices, and the intention behind all our choices seems to be what matters. Daniel Brinkley, who's a famous NDEer, he was actually an assassin for the U.S. government in the Vietnam War, and some of his stories are pretty jarring, experiencing from the other perspectives. But during the Panoramic Life Review, this is what he says, choice making is a serious challenge. During the Panoramic Life Review, we will see clearly the real intentions of our choices. The reason we do something is far more important than the act itself. The intention motivating us to take action determines the spiritual effectiveness of that action. Jeff Jansen has studied over 3,500 NDEs and written a number of books on the subject. His book, Your Life's Ripple Effect, has 500 life review examples and their implications about life. I can recommend that book. Now to finish off the common elements, let me get back to the list. We got 7, 8, and 9. A border or a barrier is usually encountered where the person knows that if he crosses that river or that wall or goes through that door, he intuitively knows that he will not return to his current life. Note your time, it's not your time, you need to go back is a pretty common thing that they describe hearing. Person is asked if they want to stay, sometimes shown future parts of their life to incentivize returning, or flat out told you must go back, you have more to do. When encouraged or told to return, there's a clear message that there is a strong purpose that person had for his or her life, and there is more that can be accomplished towards those goals. And finally, the return to the body, which invariably happens for those who don't die and do come back. They experience going back into their bodies. They often feel like they're going backwards rapidly, sometimes feeling slammed into their bodies, other times simply waking up in their bodies. All the pain, if injured, returns at that moment. So now I'm going to quickly run through the after effects. Researchers are equally captivated by the consistent after effects and changes in personality that almost universally occur following a near-death experience of any depth, essentially their time in the light. Psychiatrists and psychologists tell us no other experience in life, such as a brush with death from, say, cancer or an accident, rearranges a person's priorities in life like a near-death experience. There occurs a fundamental shift in people's priorities, interests, and outlooks. Initially, NDEers often experience a real state of depression that can last more than a year. This generally stems from missing home, being away from that place of unconditional love, as well as not being able to understand or find anyone to listen to them share their experience. For years, many experiencers feel out of place, like they don't fit in. They feel people don't understand them. Their interests have changed significantly. Many change careers, like Larry the Hammer. I think his name was Larry. Anyway, Larry the Hammer was working at a large law firm, and he got his nickname because he was so good at squeezing depositions out of people. After his near-death experience, he couldn't pressure anybody anymore like that, and they let him go. And he found a kinder, gentler job in a small law office. 70-75% of marriages break up because the spouses don't recognize their old partner with his or her new interest and priorities. One aspect of the changes that fascinates researchers is the memory of the experience never fades or changes, unlike dreams or even all other events in our lives. Researchers note that the details of the story never change regardless of the years that have passed, and the experiencers consistently claim it's as if it happened yesterday. Typically, researchers find it takes about 5 to 7 years for near-death experiencers to fully integrate and embrace the value of these experiences. So, quickly going through some of the categories they give. There's a self-acceptance and a changed self-image. They typically have a heightened sense of self-worth. They're less dependent on the approval of others, increased curiosity levels, and an insatiable hunger for knowledge. Another one, compassion for others. They're more forgiving and tolerant. They're less critical and judgmental. Feelings of aggression are gone. Struggle to comprehend violence towards others, and a strong desire to help and support others. Third one, no fear of death and a conviction of life after death. Zero fear of death, and know rather than believe in life after death. New appreciation for life, no longer fearing death, changes their outlook on life. What is important? Love, relationships, helping others. And what is irrelevant? Status, material things, appearances, competition, etc. They have a new, deeper appreciation for life, wanting to live life to the fullest, and now realizing life is such a valuable gift, such an amazing opportunity. They have a new sense of purpose for being here, realize they have a mission, though usually they have no idea what that mission is. They do not come back with knowing what they're working on. A deep appreciation for and an interest in nature is very common. A lot say they have to spend a lot of time out in nature after their near-death experience. A new love for classical and soothing music. Less religious and more spiritual, significant drop in active affiliation with religious institutions. Most claim they now know with certainty that God or Source or the Creator exist. Greater interest in spirituality, meditation, prayer, and surrender. Physical changes. Many describe a hypersensitivity to light, sound, taste, touch, smell, and things like alcohol, pharmaceuticals, seeing violence, or even watching TV can be difficult. Body can emit electromagnetic field that interferes with electrical equipment. A lot of these things happen for a year or two and then fade in time, but so many of them used to say that they can't wear watches. Watches don't work, or street lights seem to go on when they walk under them. Sudden new healing abilities like Reiki. Miraculous physical healings following what almost killed them. Anita Moorjani and Natalie Sudman, the one who's blown up in Iraq, are strong examples of this. And finally, enhanced intuition sensitivity, heightened intuition and precognition. They see events before they happen, which can be really burdensome. Hyper-empathetic, they take on emotions of others. They intuit people's minds. They can read people's thoughts, and they see auras. They see colors and energies around people. So, there you have it. Now I'd like to move to the best part of the presentation, and that's to watch this 15-minute video, which I will follow with some concluding comments of their observations regarding life and love. An amazing story, but a pretty typical story. And so to wrap this up, I wanted to share some of the quotes that I captured from this and then what we've heard from others. Andy said, when back, I felt like a stranger in a strange land, like I didn't belong here. He said, as if it happened 10 seconds ago, not 65 years ago. Again, the fact that they remember these details like nothing else in life. I never lost 1 second of consciousness, he said. When I was absorbed by the light, I knew everything about everything. Andy, you spent so much time being too serious. Life is to be enjoyed. That's why you have come, to experience what you can experience in the light, where there are no highs and lows. And finally, Andy, remember, everything on the planet is an illusion. Reality is in the light. So a lot of these things are repeated. I've got a few more that I hear frequently to wrap this up. First, how could I have forgotten who we really are? Such amazingly powerful beings, so creative, so capable of such love. I was stunned to see how connected I am to everyone and everything in creation. Hear this so often. I had an aha moment when I was in the light, when I came to understand there is a positive purpose for everything that happens in life. And it all made perfect sense. It's brilliant. Another one, I had everything backwards in life. Everything I believed, everything I had learned, everything I thought was important was wrong. Nancy Dannison, a national attorney in the healthcare industry, wrote a book about it. She had 3 NDEs, and the title of her book was Backwards. I saw how the Creator gave us the ultimate gift of free will, the gift to choose or reject love, to choose or reject fear, which leads to what we consider evil, and to even choose or reject that which created us, the Creator. Another one, I wish everyone could know how infinitely and unconditionally loved we are, how completely accepted we are just as we are. You really can't screw this thing we call life up. You can't fail. Now, you can see how you wasted much of this opportunity and wish you had made more progress on whatever goals you had for this life, but no life is wasted. Another one, I can tell you one thing. The next time I watch my life review of this day forward, it will be a less painful experience as I'll be more aware of the golden rule and how I impact others. Another one, I was told to be less serious in life, to have fun, to enjoy life and the many things that are uniquely available to us to experience while in this 3-dimensional, time-based experience we call life. And 2 more. Source is for real. I was stunned, not what I previously believed, and using the term God is far too small based upon what I was taught growing up regarding God. For what I encountered was much, much more. And finally, one that really intrigues me, I heard it at the first conference I went to, and I've read others say this. I always thought of love as an emotion, something we feel. But I was shown that love is actually the energy of which all of creation is made. And the Creator who I encountered as the light, pure light, is pure love. So, what will you say to your grandchild or child or nephew or niece when asked, what is life, what is love? And more importantly, how will you answer when you ask yourself those same questions? That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.
We have a few minutes where if you have any questions, we can field a few questions here with David.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. I'm wondering, now that a lot of therapists are being trained in ketamine therapy, LSD, whatever we're calling it now, and especially for people with PTSD, post-traumatic stress. It sounds like they're having similar type experiences of very positive, a lot of improvement. So I'm wondering if these two fields, they feel adjacent. I'm wondering if they...
The researchers are trying to figure that out. I heard an interview by Dr. Grayson at UVA Medical School, and he said, we're not clear on this because we think some of these psychedelic experiences are simulations. They create feelings, but we don't believe they're actual consciousness leaving the body. And yet they do have some that are conscious leaving the body, like our friend Renee Jorgensen done. So there's an interesting interview online where they're wrestling with that. And of course, it's also new that it's only, this whole subject's only gotten into medical schools in the last 10 or 20 years. A survey last year that UVA had, all of their doctors, there were 900 and some in their system, I think 200 and some responded. Most of them now had heard of it. Some of them had had a class in it, but most of them had never had a class or learned anything in med school about this. And so what they're trying to coach the medical community is at least just listen to them, because there's been so much damage of saying, oh, that's interesting, and then they usually refer them to a psychologist, which does all sorts of damage of these people trying to assimilate these experiences. But the information is out there. They're learning a lot more. What you're bringing up is, I think, is a really interesting subject. With ketamine and other things, whether this can trigger near-death experiences. Are they simulations of near-death? Is consciousness actually leaving the brain at that point? Good question. Don't know the answer. Yes?
Do you find any repressed memories of near-death experiences, or do they always remember them immediately?
This is interesting because about 85% of people who die and are resuscitated have no memory at all. So the heart attack study was 24% had near-death experience. So most people have no recollection of this. But it's been interesting because there's several cases. One woman who came here and spoke, who had not had this before, she had a near-death experience. And then she had another one later in life. And in the later one, she relived an experience earlier where she had had a near-death experience and didn't remember it. She went to her parents and said, did I drown at a church picnic at the river? And they said, yeah, when you were a toddler, you fell in. She relived that experience and relived her near-death experience. So you've got to wonder how many people have these experiences and just don't remember what happened. It's a big question. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
Just a point of information. There's a relatively local doctor who collected near-death experiences from his patients and published a book of them. Bob Abel.
Yes. I doctor from Wilmington is here.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, it's very good. I did read
Yes.
that. Thank you.
Has there been much research for individuals that had near-death experiences, any sort of, looking at what their makeup was, their characteristics, studying those versus individuals that have had near-death experiences but didn't experience these sort of things at all? Is there any commonality in other words, are some individuals primed to have this sort of experience where other individuals aren't?
Yeah, I've heard both things, that people who meditate and are more open to these subjects seem to go into these experiences more easily. But as far as the background of people, they're seeing it across all cultures. The cultures seem to influence the experience to some degree, but they don't see, for example, some people have had very frightening experiences. They say, oh, they must have led terrible lives and done a lot of things to hurt people. They're not seeing that. It seems to cross all cultures, all backgrounds, all religious beliefs, though they can paint the experience. Some people say, I was with Jesus, and other people said, I was with Buddha. So they're not sure what they're really encountering, but their backgrounds do paint how their experience plays out.